Good evening. Welcome to The Turning Point, sponsored by the Freedom Institute for Economic, Social Justice, Economic, and Political Empowerment for the People. Tonight we're going to have a discussion on two areas. Amidst this area and this era of divisiveness, as racial overtones, as we see a president who is bent on trying to overturn an election, and we see groups going to state capitals threatening and intimidating folks, even coming to their homes. Here in Detroit, where we saw recently people standing out front of the home with weapons at the home of Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson while she was decorating her home along with her 4-year-old child on a Saturday night in Detroit, where we see folk coming to the state capitol, brandishing weapons, Confederate flags, hangman's nooses, and the likes, Nazi swastikas. And we see all of these things coming together. It is important that we begin to kind of ferret out how we as a community are going to engage each other. Most recently, we've seen the president's so-called attorney, I really call him an consigliere. You know that term from the movie The Godfather. That was the attorney that was used to supplement and try to excuse and to defend all of the wrongdoing that the Godfather, Marlon Brando, was engaged in. He protected the family. And so that's how I view Rudolph Giuliani, as one who's going around with these bogus claims, talking about election fraud, talking about rigged elections where there is no evidence of anything. And the courts are throwing out case after case after case, and now they're going to state legislators trying to get them to overturn the duly democratically elected results of the people in various states. And they're targeting African-American cities, cities like Detroit, cities like Philadelphia, cities like Atlanta, cities like Milwaukee, where we happen to be in the majority. Most recently here in the state of Michigan, there was a hearing held in Lansing with Mr. Giuliani coming in and presenting this show and tell to try to get the Michigan legislature to somehow delay, overturn, and negate the outcome of the Michigan election on November the 3rd. As you know, Vice President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect or Vice President-elect now, Kamala Harris, won Michigan by 154,000 votes. He's now president-elect. She's now vice president-elect. And yet they want people to overturn that. Mr. Rudy Giuliani, whom we did not know, obviously was a victim of COVID-19. He may have even given that to some of the people sitting around him. But there was really a kind of a controversial hearing. And one of the things that came out of that hearing, because people did not like the way some of it went, was attacks against one of the state representatives, Representative Cynthia Johnson. As a result of the attacks on her life, she also responded, and now she has been had her committee responsibilities removed, and she's kind of now being painted as a bad apple. We have her tonight as our special guest. I want to talk to her about what happened, how she sees it, and where we go from here. Also, let's keep in mind we are in the season of giving, of Thanksgiving, a holy season of Christmas and Kwanzaa. So I'm going to talk to two ladies who are very much involved in that. First lady of Fellowship Chapel, the executive director for the James Wadsworth Center, our community outreach center, Lady Monica Anthony, and also the assistant minister here at Fellowship, the Reverend Dr. Myra Lisa Reynolds, who was also an educator, who was the principal of the renowned Detroit High School, the Detroit School for the Performing Arts. Stay with us. We're going to talk to Representative Cynthia Stevens. I got Cynthia Stevens on my mind because she's one of the judges that defended our right to vote. But right now, we're going to talk to Representative Cynthia Johnson. Good evening, Representative Johnson.
Thank you so much, Reverend Wendell Anthony, for having us today. Isn't it sad that we have to even still deal with this kind of nonsense of discrimination over and over? It's 2020, but now we are going to make some changes.
It is unfortunate, it is sad that we have to deal with this. Can you just explain what happened relative to this? There was a hearing that was held, and you were obviously in the throes of that, and the committee that you were on, and the hearing that you had recently to talk about the election here in the state of Michigan.
Okay, so I'm going to try and, because it's you, I want to try and give you as thorough understanding as possible for our people. Okay, so as a member, as a state legislator, there are committees that you're placed on. Well, one of those committees that I was placed on is the Oversight Committee. And I was placed there as the minority vice chair. It really means nothing if you're not in the majority, for real. The day before the day that we're talking about, the day that Giuliani was in Michigan in Lansing and was invited to this Oversight Committee for what I still don't know. But anyway, nevertheless, the Republican Party invited him there. And I did not even get word as the minority chair. I never even got word that he was, I didn't get enough time. I didn't get enough warning. I got like less than 24 hours to say, hey, Giuliani is going to be here. So I got on Facebook immediately trying to inform as many people as possible. And that's another thing when I ask you all to help out, what I mean by that is I need you to show up at these committees. They're not listening to you all when we just talk among ourselves. We have to put things in writing, and we have to show up at these committees because they definitely do. Anyway, on the day of December 2nd, our committee meeting started at 6 o'clock. Giuliani came in there with his entourage, of which I had no idea. I never knew that they were having all these people who were going to come in with testimonies that were unverified. And so I questioned that. When Giuliani started speaking, one of my colleagues, Representative Camilleri, a Democrat, he questioned Giuliani and he questioned and he wanted him to be under oath. That was hammered down. It was voted down, but it was never supposed to be a vote. That's number one. Then I requested many times, I was gavelled down about 2, maybe 3 times when I was asking that the witnesses oath be taken from them, and that was hammered down. So,
Representative Johnson, let me ask you a question, because on that point, Representative Mary Whiteford of Casco, she was kind of upset because I think you asked one of the witnesses to spell their name. Is that out of order? Is that unusual or something?
You know, anything that somebody of color, anybody who threatens them or who they perceive as a threat is supposed to sit back and just play the role. Let people see that we have somebody of color with us. We really don't want that person to say anything. So Mary Whiteford, she's a representative. She's a Republican representative. And how you mentioned her name, but we need to tell a backstory to that. Once let's just say the hearing is over with right now, and I started getting these threats. I got a threat from a woman who was saying that I need to be hung. She called me what did she call me? A big lip nigger? Yeah, something like that. And among a lot of other things. And I shared that video or voicemail with all of my colleagues, including the Republicans. I feel that we all need to be on the same page. We need to know what kind of hate is coming after us. So we need to share it.
So let me back you up for a second. So you shared the threats that you were getting with your colleagues, both Republican and Democrat. And did
Exactly.
anybody respond to the concerns that you levied in terms of the threats that you were getting, the threats against your life, the threats about the name calling and that you should be hung? Did anybody respond to that?
No one. The only person who responded was, well, a couple of people responded, but a Representative Mary Whiteford is the one who responded by stating, "Why are you sharing this with me and the other representatives?" When I saw her statement, I said, "Oh, lady, you don't know me." And so I immediately copied it and pasted it. I didn't say those words. She said those words. I didn't make those voicemail messages. They've made those voicemail messages. So I shared them, as I will. And so that's where the Mary Whiteford comment came from, after me sharing this disgusting, vile voicemail that I had to hear. Not one time did she say, "Oh, that's terrible," or anything. It was, "Why did you share this with me?" And then went to say, "Shame on you for taking your power. You're using your power, and you're not being nice to you're not being compassionate. You're not being compassionate." Okay, so I shared it.
Let me ask you a question.
I'm supposed to be compassionate. No, let me back up with that. The compassionate part comes in when, in the hearing, I requested that one of the witnesses, if you want to call her witness, I requested that she spell her name. Now, she was from another country. She was making comments and statements that were unsubstantiated. I knew that she had been in the country. She had already admitted she's been in the country for 30 years, but I knew she was more than 30 years old, so I wanted to know what was her birth name. And I wanted her to spell it. Why did I want to do that? Because if I want to do some background check on her, which I encourage everybody to do, then I want to know as much about her as I can. And especially since she came before the Oversight Committee with helping Giuliani try to overthrow the election that happened in the city of Detroit, trying to take away votes from the citizens of Detroit, trying to degrade my city, my people. I wasn't having it.
I hear you. Let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question. And because I feel, and I think everybody can understand the emotion and the concern around voting. That's almost like, as John Lewis said, it's like a sacred issue for us. One of the things that came out of that, and people can understand, you're threatened, you are receiving these calls from all these sources from all around. You've shared it now with your colleagues, and nobody has responded. And now you make a video. And your video, and I'm quoting from what I know that was in the video. I've seen the video, and I'm sure many people have seen it. I know that there are about over 1 million hits regarding the video, and it's just gone all around the country. But one of the things that, and correct me if I don't get it right, but it's a 3-minute video posted to Facebook in which you are saying to the people that are making threats and to your supporters, do things right and in order. But you also say, be careful and walk lightly. We ain't playing with you. And you're suggesting to your supporters to hit their rear ends in the pocketbook. You do say that you should hit them in the pocketbook. You should hurt them where it hurts. And you say enough of the shenanigans, enough is enough. And for those of you who are soldiers, you know how to do it right, be in order, make them pay. What did you mean when you said that?
What I meant by that, in the community that we come from, we are soldiers for Christ. We are soldiers against, we are soldiers for democracy. We are soldiers against racism. We are supposed to help one another, and we're not supposed to be just laying down and accept anything. When I say pay them, they are going to pay, I mean for each of us to get off our behinds and vote. Use your dollars wisely. Don't give your dollars to people who don't care or even respect you. That's what I meant. And most people from our community knew exactly what I meant. It is not my fault. It is not up to me to make sure they understand the language. But if you don't understand the language, Mr. White Man and white woman, all we ask you to do is pick up the phone, let's talk, and let's get an understanding. Because so far what's going on in this country is so close to, against black people, domestic violence. I think of this like domestic terrorism, domestic violence. See, when you know a person who has been violently, who has been a victim of domestic violence, many times the woman, in most cases, the woman will take the abuse, the physical, the mental abuse. You see, this time they actually tried to do that this time, but it didn't. Gonna play their games. I'm not gonna give them trigger words like racism. I already know that they're gonna say, oh, I'm not racist. Okay, so we'll leave that word alone. We'll leave that word alone, okay? But we know who you are. We know what you are. And we know that our people have been drugged through the mud. We know that just like Cynthia Johnson got her committee stripped, just like I was like, they used me to say we're gonna strip you of your powers. We're gonna find you guilty.
Let me ask you this.
Checking.
And I feel, let me ask you this, Rep.
Checking, Pastor.
Let me ask you this, Rep, because I feel you, I hear you. One of the things, and I think black folk and people who are in the community do kind of understand some of where you're coming from on that. But in this climate where people are saying all kinds of things, where folk are talking about stand down but stand by. That's what the president said. When you have another colleague who's no longer a colleague up in Lansing, Tom Eckerly, who talked about the whole thing about having to wear masks in Lansing can be blamed on those ends in Detroit, talking about black people in Detroit. He summarily had to leave the House because of that. When you see that, and you are a very intelligent woman and you understand how this stuff works, but when you use terms like, I'm just having a conversation with you, when you use terms like soldiers, I understand that, you understand that, but do you think that that kind of language might fuel some other people who could take advantage of what you're saying and use it in a different way, not the way that you intended it, not the way that you want it to be received, but in a way that they can misuse it and abuse it, and where it makes it difficult for others to be able to articulate justice and to articulate fairness when it comes to these kind of situations?
Okay, so let me answer that question like this. I am not going to appease people to understand my language. I can't change the way I look. I cannot change my color. But my color scares some people. So the word that I use, that our ancestors use, and that my black people, that the people in my community use, and if you know who I am, and if you just check out who I am, then you would have known. I'm not going to use a different word. You want me to use fighter? Okay, I'm a fighter. I'm a soldier. I'm a soldier for Christ.
I understand that, and it's not what I would have you to use, it's what you feel comfortable with using, but also recognizing the position that you're in. Let me ask you about process. In terms of, you mentioned that they did strip you, Lee Chatfield stripped you from your committee responsibilities and took that away from you. Is there a process that is supposed to be undertaken? Is there supposed to be a hearing? Is there supposed to be some witness, some testimony? Is there supposed to be something that occurs before you are removed from committees? Did they disadvantage you like that? Is this a precedent-setting move, or have they done this to other folk? And for people at home, if you have a question, you can also chime in. You can text a question to the Freedom Institute, and we'll be glad to ask your question for Representative Johnson. But is there a process, Rep, that was supposed to be followed, or is this the norm?
You know, Reverend, as you know, this is my first term, and this is something that I've never experienced before. What I understand is that there's supposed to be some kind of hearing next week. Obviously, I doubt if they're going to do that, especially since they realize that egg is on their face today. But it just saddens me, really, because I thought these people knew me a little bit. Hint, hint. I thought they knew me a little bit. I went into office with an open heart and an open mind to work with people on both sides of the aisle. And what they pretty much did, and I don't know, what I would have thought that they would have done was to say, hey, Cynthia, what did you mean by this? Do you know, Pastor, I did not find out about this second video, this Splice video, the one that everybody, and the one that I'm getting all of these hateful emails, still getting them as we speak right now. We've got over 5,000 of them.
You've got over 5,000 calls right now. You've gotten over 5,000 calls right now. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yes, over 5,000. Is it calls and emails? We've gotten over 5,000 calls and emails. That's at my office. That does not include the calls, the emails, the voice messages that I have on my personal phone. So
what are they? And what are the people saying to you that are emailing you and that are calling you?
Oh, well, wait a minute. Let me. Yeah, they're. Okay.
I mean, are they saying? Are you still under threat? Are they still threatening you at this point?
Yes, yes, and my family.
Do you feel that you need security, or are you being protected right now?
I'm always protected.
I understand that. We all are. But I mean, do you have some personal protection relative to MSP or the forces
MSP
that we have?
Yes, Michigan State Police has been here. FBI has been here twice. The law enforcement, they are great. Detroit, great. I mean, I can't ask for a better group of soldiers, really.
If you had to do this over following this situation, would you do anything differently?
I would do absolutely nothing different, because this is not new. This is something that we have been having to deal with for centuries. And for all of my 62 years, I've seen this thing over and over. And all the years that I've been fighting for our people, I've seen it. It hurt, didn't know what to do. But now that I have the platform and I have the ability to look out for our community, that's what I do. I look out. I'm not a political person. I may say some things that you don't like. I'm the cursing representative. Okay, I'll take that. But Cynthia A. Johnson truly, truly, truly loved her people, her community, and all like-minded people, including Republicans.
Do you still, at this point, have the ability to cast your votes? Are your votes being counted? You're still a legitimate, bona fide member of the House of Representatives, and you can still exercise your duties.
Okay, so I believe I'll be going back to session next week, rather. Okay, so we're not sure whether or not we'll be going back into session this year. I'm not sure about that. But the committees that I was stripped of are.
And tell us what the committees were that you were stripped from.
Okay, they were Family, Children, and Seniors. That's one. Then the Agricultural Committee, 2. And then the third one was the infamous Oversight Committee. Now, I was stripped from those by Lee Chatfield, who, by the way, has not even reached out to even say anything to me. Even after the article came out today by MichiganAdvance.com. Make sure you read that. Make sure you share it, because it totally exonerates me. But yet, Chatfield has not called me. However, Representative-elect, Chair-elect Jason Wentworth, he reached out to me. We had a really good conversation, but of course, this is he's got to play his political game, I guess. But I think he sounded really genuine, that he's willing to work with me. Cynthia, you can pick up the phone and call me and say, Jason, I need to work. He's willing, according to Jason Wentworth, he is willing to work with me. And I told him that this is an opportunity for all of us. This is not a black issue. This is a human issue. And we've all been duped. We've been duped, unfortunately, by their forefathers.
Representative Johnson, I want to thank you for being here, but before I let you go, there is this case that is coming out of Texas to discount the votes in Michigan, Georgia, Wisconsin, and of course Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, the cities where black folk are. And if they do that, they really are asking the legislators to come up with some new electors to replace the electors that are structured and determined for the Biden-Harris win.
Let me just stop
so,
you there.
So what I want to ask you is that, do you see any chance of that happening with the legislative body that we have, or is this just a bogus effort? Because we need you and others like-minded to fight that fight and to hold the line. So do you see any chance of that happening?
No.
Good answer. Just period, no.
No.
I appreciate that.
We have work to do, my dear soldiers. We have a lot of work to do. And please, instead of calling us and say, hey, I got your back 100%, put it in writing.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. We appreciate you. Stay strong. Stay true to power, and we wish you God's blessing in this holy and holiday season. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch. Thank you for watching with us tonight. We appreciate your being here. We'll see you next Thursday right here on The Turning Point as we try to turn another point in the course of our lives. Stay safe. See you next time. Young, come on now.